every single game that I touch, I end up making mods. And it's kind of like a course in a way, because sometimes you just want to play the game as it was intended. But at the same time, your brain doesn't stop going like, what if I could modify this?
Do you think that up-and-coming 3D character artists know that the avenue of modding is there for the grabs? It's a thing that everybody knows about?
It is not.
It is not,
It really
okay.
isn't. It's very true that lots of companies take modding into account when they have to hire people.
Could you just talk about asymmetry and how important asymmetry is in art and in 3D art?
Organic means made by nature. It is not going to have perfection. People in real life, they are not symmetrical.
What do you think about AI and about what it might do in the next 5 to 10 years?
The main problem of AI companies is that
I just had a wonderful conversation with Claudia Rivera, a professional 3D character artist, teacher, and modder. Let me just say that modding is a much deeper concept than I had ever imagined it to be. And Claudia is actually the 3D character artist for the highly anticipated game Road to Vostok. So if you played the game, all the characters that you see and that you interact with are all Claudia's work. In our conversation, Claudia reflects on the impact of negative feedback from teachers, the rewards of being able to teach others, and the importance of networking, as well as some advice on overcoming social anxiety. And with that said, let's uncover Claudia's story. Claudia, pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your time. As always, every single guest that comes on, I'm honored by their presence. And especially today that Antti, whom we know very well, has helped me out and has, asked you to participate in the podcast today. So I'm very thankful to you, and I'm very thankful to Antti as well for being here. If we are to start, then perhaps the first question that I would be interested to ask you is, and I've spoken to quite a few 3D character artists on the podcast, and each one of them has their own, let's say, origin story of how they got into art and then into 3D art. From what I understand, the passion starts with 2D art, right? Probably drawing or something like that. So was that the case for you? And if so, how did the passion for art and drawing come about for you?
Well, actually, it is often the case that it goes from 2D, like you start drawing as a kid or something, and then you find yourself getting into the world of 3D. But for me, it's actually not like that, because I'm not really good at 2D.
Really?
I don't really draw. I would like to actually draw and do good things in 2D, but I don't really do that. My
Interesting.
passion actually started because my father used to do 3D work. He still does it. But he used to work as a freelance for different companies. He used to do like 3D models of houses and just general architecture. And now he still does that, just in another way. And when I was a kid, I would see him do that, and I was like, I want to do that as well. But it also came at the same time as I was growing up, starting to play video games. So I was like, I would like to merge the two. And then I realized, well, I could do 3D for games. And from there, it started just snowballing into just like a more specific kind of 3D.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
like
That's
character art.
That's very interesting. So would you say that the lack of 2D, let's say 2D drawing, was that an advantage or a disadvantage for you, do you think? Or neither?
I wouldn't say it is either, because actually I believe that the two complement each other. So if you have a background in 2D and, for example, in anatomy, like you draw anatomy things, you're going to have an easier time understanding it in 3D. So when I got to 3D and I started to actually do anatomy sculptures, it was harder because I hadn't done that before in 2D or in anything. So I struggled a little bit. But now if I have to draw something, I can actually see it in 3D because I've done it in 3D
Oh, wow.
with anatomy. So kind of like my 2D skills got a little bit boosted from the 3D. It's kind of like that.
Wow, that's really interesting. To me, it's a bit of a conundrum because I come from an art background. I used to draw and I went to art school and all that. So for me, it just makes logical sense that you would first draw something in 2D and then kind of work your way to 3D. But to straight away start from 3D, as you're saying, and then, being able to, as you said, visualize in 3D, perhaps that's also in a way a superpower, because I think, there's no barrier there, because as 2D artists, there's a small barrier of transitioning from 2D to 3D,
Yes.
whereas you just went to 3D straight away. So, well, in a way, that could be a small hack for anybody looking to go into 3D. Forget 2D and just go for 3D straight away.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I was studying, like at high school, we had art subject, and I was really bad at it because I struggled to draw. And my teacher once told me that I had no visualizing skill in 3D.
Oh my God,
And I was
again.
like, but yeah, now I do 3D and it's
Yeah,
very
well,
good.
quite frankly, with my previous guest, Senkai Goose, we had a brief conversation about teachers and about how they can extremely either demotivate a student or actually, on the contrary, motivate a student. So it really pains me to hear these stories of teachers, let's say, demotivating students by saying comments like that. We've mentioned a few stories, one of his and one of mine, where we got a bit demotivated. But just like you, we have turned everything around and looked at our teachers and said, "Told you so." So, did you have that moment? Did the teacher manage to see your current success in your path in your
I
career?
don't think so. I don't
No.
because I haven't seen that teacher again.
All
I've had
right.
similar stories as well with teachers that straight up said that my 3D was shit in front of everyone. It was like, okay, fine, but I haven't seen any of those teachers.
That's good. Maybe you shouldn't see them at all. Do you think that
Yeah,
was did that motivate you in any way at all, or did it really demotivate you? Actually, what would you say?
I'm not sure about that because
Hmm.
to me it was like a moment of it's kind of like a punch, right? Like you're punched in front of everyone, and it's kind of like, well, why am I doing this? But at the same time, it is also that passion inside of you that goes like, no, just because this person has said this doesn't mean that it is correct. So you just keep going, even if the teacher says that. But it's kind of like a learning moment as well, in regards to how you as a person will treat people. Um, like whenever you have a similar moment in which you see someone that maybe isn't that good, or are you going to tell them that their art is shit or that they don't have any visualizing skills for 3D? No, you're just going to try to be better.
Exactly. No, that's yeah, exactly. I mean, you know what? These teachers. Anyways, I can go on a big tangent talking about teachers and all their characteristics, but understood. Well, it's good that you have persevered, and obviously you've persevered extremely well. Um, coming from somebody who somewhat understands art, I look at your work and I'm fascinated. Really, it's really really amazing. And the more I speak to 3D character artists, the more I look into 3D art, the more I realize what a difficult endeavor this is. So it's not as simple as drawing something. It really requires a different approach to creating something in 3D space, in a way like sculpting, but also it's different to that. So great. I'm so happy to hear that these teachers were absolutely wrong. Talk to me
Yeah.
about some of perhaps some of the mentors, maybe some designers that you look up to in terms of design, maybe in terms of just learning from them. Perhaps your father was one of them. If you could open up about that a little bit, so that if anybody listening who's into 3D art could also look at these artists and see their work.
Yeah, my dad was like the biggest example to me, seeing him work and well, just the way he's focused his life and how stubborn he can be to get things right and to continue learning because you never stop learning when it comes to these things. You're always learning new technologies and new things, and the way my dad kind of took that just really taught me things. But in regards to actually character art, there is just a lot of people that I've learned from and that I love the things they do. Perhaps the one that most inspired me to learn and just to keep going was Raf Grassetti, who is the art director of God of War, or was. Now he works at Naughty Dog. Um, when I was getting started with character art, I actually did his courses, and they were so good. Like he taught so nicely about the sculpting and generally about just anatomy, ZBrush. It was really good. And then was Scott Eaton actually. He does very good anatomy courses. His way of teaching anatomy and his passion for it really gave me that passion as well of actually understanding anatomy better and trying to focus on it, because normally when you are doing 3D it's kind of like you focus on the parts that you like, and for me it was like I don't want to do anatomy, I don't like it, but
Right.
Scott Eaton made me like it.
It's
And then there
important.
is, yeah, it's very important. Then there was this other guy. His name is Lucas Kutschera, I think it's pronounced. He's a digital sculptor, and he recently made a very good book about sculpting, which I always recommend to my students as well, because it teaches you every basic about sculpting digitally. It's very good, but in the end, you just adapt like everything you know into your own style, because you just experiment so much doing a lot of projects. You just end up uh, having your own idea, your own way of doing things.
Yeah, definitely. I think developing your style, probably is, well, I think, I'm not 100% sure, one of the hardest things. Because, when you look at the big players, it's very easy to copy what they're doing. And in one of our previous conversation with my guest, we mentioned the fact that they've, spent their whole careers developing their style and their way of doing things. So when you try to copy them, it's a great exercise, right? To improve and to see what you can do, but to develop something of your own, that's something that requires a lot of time. So how long did it take you to understand? I wouldn't go as far as to say that you have completely developed your style. I think you have all your life ahead of you to become better and better, right? But you've definitely developed it for the moment as it is today. So how long did that take you? And when did you realize that, okay, so this is kind of my little, let's say, my niche, my style of 3D art that I like and that I'm gonna do?
That must have taken like a long time. Like now, as it stands right now, I am very comfortable with the way I'm doing 3D. Like I don't like to do hyper realism, like not too much, but I like realistic things, and I also love stylized things. So I'm trying to kind of have something in between, not so stylized that you think that this cartoon, but also not so realistic that you get into uncanny valley moments in which you try to do hyper realistic things and you just don't get there. So that must have taken like 8 years,
Wow. Oh my
perhaps.
God.
Since,
Okay.
yeah, it's I started doing character art probably 8 or 7 years ago. Yes.
Well, that's a significant amount of time. My God.
Yeah.
Yeah, to develop yourself. I agree with you about the fact that, going hyper realistic, excuse me, perhaps is, um, in a way, can take away from a game. I'm not talking about AAA titles because obviously they're going specifically for the graphics and, think of that what you will. But in terms of, let's say, indie titles and maybe AA titles, it just feels right when the character looks real, but not hyper realistic, right? It feels like a video game and, it really, I think connects everything, connects all the dots together. And at the end of the day, it's really about, the gameplay, the mechanics, and for the whole world to
Yes.
feel cohesive together. So that's a really interesting point that you're bringing, because I would assume that people would think, well, if I can sculpt something or someone to look exactly as it is, perhaps that's the way to go. But you're talking about the fact that, well, there's also another avenue to look into. Would you say that, when you're developing your style, are you trying to aim for a certain company or a certain set of companies that you would like to work for? Or are you just kind of brainstorming for yourself and being like, you know what, I'll develop something of my own and I'll see what happens after that?
It tends to depend on the project. I always have personal projects going, but there are some that are obviously more aimed for like certain companies, because obviously every artist has their company that they would like to work on.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of those, and it is true that for certain 3D models that I've done, I've tried to kind of like bring it in a way that kind of fits their style of game, sort of. But also that it can bring something new for them, because otherwise, if you just adapt to everything they do and just copy everything they do, it's like, yeah, okay, but we have the same artist here, so I
Yeah,
always
makes
try
sense.
to, yeah, I always try to just try to bring something new, and of course, just explain everything I know. That's the important part of it.
Yeah, that does make actually perfect sense what you're saying about the fact that, well, we already have the same artists in our company. That's true. Well, talk to me about the companies that you would like to work for. Um, you know, just to name a few if you can.
Yeah, I am actually a huge fan of Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty
anything
obvious.
related to Elder Scrolls, yeah, anything related to Elder Scrolls would be really good. And
Hmm.
I always try to interact with them, make like participate in the art contests they do. I've modded their games, and I actually like to see how they develop their games in regards to like. Um, Presentations they do in different developer events. I love seeing how their artists explain how they do things and such. So a few of my projects have been like aimed towards that kind of, and the other one is GSC Game World Stalker, because I just love
Yeah.
Stalker, and I've modded their games as well, and I'm just so shocked by Stalker 2. I just keep looking at the characters, the mutants, everything. It's
Right.
just incredible.
Right, right. I can imagine. I think you personally, or maybe 3D artists in general, could have a more deeper appreciation of any sort of video game that they play when, like you said, you get fascinated by just looking at the models and you know exactly what it takes to, make something like that. And from what I've seen, for Stalker, too, they did such an amazing job. They even have like different teeth models on characters and rotten teeth, and like it goes into complete detail. I want to talk
Yeah.
about Elder Scrolls and about Stalker definitely a little bit later. Uh, what I'm gonna say now is that I'm just taking my time to play Stalker 2. I got it, I downloaded it, but I'm not playing it yet because I'm giving it like 1 or 2 months for all the patches to come in. I spoke to a friend of mine. He's like, "Look, just give it a couple of months and just sit down and enjoy it." I'm
Yeah.
eagerly waiting to play it. I've seen on Discord that every single time I look at your profile, it says playing Stalker 2.
Yes,
And I'm
yes,
like, oh,
yes.
I'm a bit jealous of that. But we're going to get into that for sure. All right. That's very, very, very interesting. So, those, obviously, right, Blizzard is a huge company, and, working there would be absolutely amazing. And I really hope you have a chance sometime in the future to do so. But let's talk about, getting noticed as a 3D character artist. Obviously, such a difficult thing to do. From the character artists that I've spoken to, all of them have their own way of seeing this problem and coming up with a solution. Obviously, there are commonalities between what they're saying, but I want to kind of see your vision on this. You spoke a little bit about this on the webinar, although it was in Spanish. I did listen to a little bit of it with the translated subtitles. It was very interesting. What you mentioned was doing demos, and I've never heard about doing demos before, so it was kind of a strategic choice for you. So if you kind of could go dive into a little bit how you got noticed as a 3D character artist. What is your trajectory? What are the little hacks that you're trying to do? And what are those demos that you were talking about in your webinar?
Yes. So when I was studying, because I studied, I'm not sure how it's called in English, but in Spanish it's kind of like it's not exactly university, like not a degree, a big degree, but it's like a long 3-year course of game design, 3D. It's like it kind of mixes everything. And while I was in my last year, a friend of my dad needed someone to do 3D things. So that was a bit of a lucky find.
Okay.
And it was like the very last month of studying. This person, he is the CEO for Tangram Solutions, which is a company which they do these things, the demos, and they sell different softwares. Uh, and he got into contact with me because he wanted someone to start doing 3D, like kind of teaching, but not actually teaching to students, but like I would learn a software and they would have me explain it to clients that had to
Hmm.
buy that software. So, for
Interesting.
example, by that time, I knew Maya, I knew Substance Painter, I knew ZBrush, Marvelous Designer as well. So they were selling Maya and Substance Painter, and the idea for them was to bring these softwares to clients, and the clients were like a director from a game studio or a school that they wanted to teach Maya or something like that. So what I had to do was to kind of do um, demos, which were me explaining how the software works, basically. And in these demos, a lot of clients would come to know about this software, and I would simply, I don't know, for example, texture a sword, and I would show them how to texture the sword and how the program works. So I started doing that. And during this time, we had like 2 weeks of going around Spain. It was kind of like a tour kind of thing, just selling this software to different places. And in that, I actually got very known around Spain from doing these things. And there were different schools that contacted me to do master classes.
Wow.
So
Nice.
that's where I started my teaching kind of thing. But apart from that, I think that, like, of course, that works very well if you can find a way to actually do the demos. Because when you find that, you get to be very known by the more local community more than wide community. But for actually getting to be known in the wide community, I think what is best is to actually join different communities in Twitter, Discord, Instagram, things like that. Because at the end of the day, if you just make a very good art and you post it in ArtStation, it is so hard that people are going to notice you.
Right.
Because if you have no followers or you don't have people that are there to see your art, it is not going to get anywhere. So what is important is to do networking. And this networking is basically getting to know people. And to get to know people, you join communities.
Right.
In Twitter, there is a very big game dev community. Like, you just start following game devs, start interacting with them. You don't even have to just go to the M's and write a private message
Yeah.
and you feel like you're bothering them. No, that you don't need to do that. Just answer their posts, comment their art, and they will notice you back. They will check your profile and they will
Wow.
also go to your profile and check. It's kind of like a very friendly community. And this happens in Twitter, but it also happens in ArtStation, for example. And there is a lot of Discord servers with communities of 3D artists which support each other and help each other not
Wow.
only learn but also grow. So that's kind of what I would recommend to people. And there is a last one, which I've seen many of my friends actually start to try when they want to get noticed, which is modding. Modding video games gets you in contact with a lot of people that actually know how to do those things. And there is other 3D artists, there is programmers, there is people that do things with sound. there is a lot of people, and through there you can get like jobs, you can get to know other people, you can get to interact with so many people that then you go there and people already know you. So it's kind of like that.
Wow. Wow, that's actually really awesome. There's a few tangents, obviously, that I could go off. Um, but let me just first of all ask this then. So you spoke about that you eventually managed to get a teaching gig, right?
Hmm.
I think that's so important in terms of improving. No matter what you're teaching, if there's a skill that you know and you have the opportunity to teach it, not only do you help others improve, but I believe you also improve yourself quite a lot. So I want to ask you, exactly about the teaching and kind of how does it make you feel when you are able to kind of exchange your knowledge with somebody else who's trying to get to where you are, right? How does that make you feel? Is it like heartwarming for you, or is it more of like a job?
Teaching for me is like a very wholesome thing. I
Mm,
really like it. Um, because you get to interact with people that wish to be at a level, possibly your own level or even more. And that's kind of like, it is your job and your duty to get them there, to push them up and help them grow as people. But through that, you also grow yourself. And not only like learning skills, because obviously you're practicing the same program that you are using, and that already makes you know the program better, but
yeah.
also with people, just treating people and teaching them, and it helps you talk a lot. And I have to say that I've learned a lot from teaching, again, from software and just dealing with people. For me, teaching, of course, it is a great job to have on the side while you're working on more on a game or something like that. But I think it's such a good job, um, because you just get that satisfaction of seeing people grow. Like they come in with no knowledge or very little knowledge, and then they learn from what you're teaching them. And after a year or two, you see them just become very good artists from where they start, and that's an amazing feel.
Yeah, that definitely is an amazing feeling. I've experienced something like that, although it's not an art, but in another discipline. So yeah, I can agree with you. It's a very unique feeling, and I would wish
Mhm.
for everybody to feel this sense of wholesomeness when someone learns from you. Tell me this. I've also asked this question to a few of the other 3D character artists that I spoke to, who actually teach. What do you think is more rewarding for you? To see your work, your 3D character artists being used in a game and being played by other players around the world, or to see your students progress and then their for example careers improve and them working in video game companies, or their characters being used in other games, and you can say, well, you know what, I was their teacher at one point. What's more rewarding for you?
That's a very hard question.
Right.
It
I
is
know
really hard.
it is.
Yeah, because on one hand, it is obviously using someone else grow and being there for them and teaching them and helping them solve issues that they probably have. But on the other hand, it is your own hard work, and you know how much you as a person have suffered to get to that point. But you may not know how much your student has suffered. Like, you know it firsthand. So I think that in that regard, it is probably seeing your own characters in a game, because you may have gone through so much failure to actually get there, and you have experienced it in your own body and mind. So I would say that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I don't believe there's a wrong answer in this question. And
Mm,
especially in today's world, right? There's so much competition in, many fields, obviously in 3D art as well. Not to
mhm,
mention AI, which I obviously want to talk to you about
mm.
later, but that's a whole other subject. But okay, that's very interesting that you said that. And thank you for sharing that. I would like to revert back a little bit on what you were saying about networking. Um, networking online is great, and it definitely works, but there's also in-person networking, right? Networking on events and going to, like you did the demos, right? Those are also in a way potentially networking events. But in these networking events, which I'm sure you might have noticed, sometimes there are occasions where you can feel anxious, anxiety can hit you. You might want to ask somebody something or introduce yourself, but you don't know exactly how to do it. And, for different people, this comes in different ways. For some people, it's natural. For some people, it's not. So in your case, what would be, your words of advice to kind of overcome that barrier, to be able to, be in public places and to be able to introduce yourself, even though if that introduction will not lead to anything, but at least, getting to know somebody is a big deal. And eventually, when you get better and better, you never know, maybe you'll meet somebody who might change your career or something.
I've actually been in like that moment. I've gone to a lot of events like this. In Spain, there is one which is called Mundos Digitales, which is in Galicia, and they do it every year. And I've gone to it both as like a normal person and also a person that is working there that gets asked questions. And it is a very hard moment to go there as like a nobody,
Yeah.
especially if you're alone, because most of the times when people go to those things, it's like a student, and it's a group of students, and you go there with like your 4 friends from the school, and as a group, you kind of like feel less anxious about approaching people. But if you go there alone, that is
Yeah.
so scary. And I went there
100%.
alone,
Oh,
so it was
man.
like I don't know how to approach people. I don't know how to deal with them. But you have, I think that after feeling that as that type of person, but also feeling that as someone that is there, that people go to ask things to, um, I think the way to see it is actually everyone is there for the same thing. The person that you want to ask something to, or the person that you may want to approach, is there knowing that they are there to be approached. They are not going to
That's
reject
interesting.
you. They are going to say, yes, come here, I'll talk to you. They'll be happy to talk to you. So I think that's probably the best way to approach it. And yeah, just be conscious that the people there that uh, either are there with their company or are there to give a demo or whatever, they are just there to talk to you and to talk to everyone. So just try to not think about the anxiety that you're
Right.
feeling and do your best to approach and just think that that moment of do I approach, do I not approach, what do I do, that is the worst moment, because the moment you are approaching and you are going hello, that is gone. Like the moment the person looks at you and goes hello, how are you, that is the conversation is going to just happen. It's going to
Right.
be a fluid, like
Right, right. Yeah, that actually makes perfect sense. Even for me, there still are moments in my life where I feel a little bit anxious. I really connect to what you're saying about the fact that they're there for the same reason. I think that could really calm you down to know that, you're not really intruding, you're not interrupting. You're there for the same reason as that other person, and that would, well, for me at least, that would work. I never thought about it that way, so that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I'll keep that in mind.
no problem.
I want to revert back to another point that you were talking about, which is modding. And my goodness, what a fascinating world that is, right? I mean, could be a separate podcast episode just speaking about modding and how,
Yeah.
modding has influenced gaming. And, so many games have become huge successes just from mods, right? And not only that, but also, you know, you mentioned, programmers can create the mods and whatnot, but also, 3D character artists like yourself can actually also contribute to modding. And I love your mods, by the way. I took a look at all of them,
Thank you.
and I was thinking, where were you when I was playing, what's it called, Project Zomboid nonstop during COVID? I would love to have all those skins, especially the one with Solid Snake. That looked absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. It looks exactly like it was made for the game and from the developers. It's really, really cool. So you mentioned a few advantages that came from modding. I just kind of want to dig a little deeper because I do believe that it's very important. So first of all, how did you discover modding, or who kind of perhaps told you, you know what, try modding out? And the second part of that question would be, how did that improve your career? So you mentioned that, you know, there's different communities, but there's also practice, right? You can practice 3D work, you can put it into the world, you know, kind of let people play around with your work. So if you could combine kind of all of those advantages, maybe disadvantages, if there are any, about modding and your modding specifically.
Um, I was actually really young when I started modding. I was like 10 or something,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
the way I discovered modding was actually very stupid, because by that time I was playing Fable: The Lost Chapters
Yeah.
and Star Wars Battlefront, the original one,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot. And I was just randomly Google things, and I found something called mods, and I was like, "What is this?" And I saw that it was modifying the video game, and I was like, "Wow, that sounds cool." And I saw that people added swords, new armors, new maps in Star Wars Battlefront, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I started downloading some and installing them, and then I realized, well, I could try doing something like this. So that is where I actually began doing my first 3D models. And it was actually with Blender 2.49, which is a very, very old version of Blender.
Okay.
And yeah, since then, every single game that I've touched, I've checked if it is moddable. And if so, I've probably made mods for it. Like every single game that I touch, I end up
Wow.
making mods. And it's kind of like a course in a way, because sometimes you just want to play the game as it was intended,
Mm,
but at the same time your brain doesn't stop going like, what if I could modify this?
right.
But I don't like to modify the game to the point of like losing the idea of the game. So yeah, I've modded lots of games like Skyrim, Stalker, as you say, Project Zomboid, Rimworld, and many of the mods that I've done were for public, but others were just made for me and my friends.
Ah, okay. Because I was going to ask, from the link that I had from you, there's only a few, right? There's not
Yeah,
only a few games, but okay. So you were even just doing it for yourself, for your friends. So you're not
yeah,
even giving it out to anybody. Oh man. Okay.
yeah. There is another for Skyrim. I upload them to Nexus, but since they did some weird thing recently, I had them delete a bunch of them because I didn't want my mods to just be used, which is actually a disadvantage of modding, because sometimes you just put a lot of work on your things and people take advantage of them because obviously you
How?
do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I don't remember what it was, the drama with Nexus mods. I think they wanted to use it for selling or something like that.
Oh wow. Okay, that's not
And
fair.
I was really not liking that, so I just deleted the ones that were less popular, because I know that a few of my mods are very used by people, so I didn't want to delete them and just leave all those people hanging.
Right.
But
Right.
the others, I just said, no, nobody's going to take advantage of the work I made for free to
Mm-hmm.
get money themselves. And that's one of the disadvantages, which happened as well with the mods I made for Stalker. People have been just stealing my 3D models and selling them around.
Oh my
So
goodness,
it's
that's
kind of,
terrible.
yeah,
So you're
yeah,
saying, so they take your 3D model, and how would they steal it? Do they, is there a way to export the mod, or
yes,
I'm sorry if I'm not really, if I don't know the subject that well. I just want to find out the intricacies, if you may explain
yeah.
those.
So for example, for Stalker Anomaly, you have like different files when you upload the mod, and one of the files is the 3D model. And if you know enough about modding a Stalker Anomaly, you can take that file, extract the 3D model,
Oh
and
my
turn it
god.
into whatever other um, format you want. So you can use it for your own game, or you can sell it, uh,
Oh wow.
and that's kind of what happens. Yes,
So you're saying
you have to
people
sell
actually
it.
took those the models and they were,
Yeah.
you know, selling them in marketplaces. Oh goodness, that's terrible. Is there a way for that's, you know, that's extremely terrible. Is there a way to insure yourself from this, or protect yourself from this, or?
Unfortunately, there isn't,
Mm.
because I mean it's modding, so we go a bit as well into what is legal and what is illegal, and there is companies which really like that people mod their games and put everything they can to make sure that people can mod their games, and
Right.
there is others which don't. It doesn't mean that it is illegal. It is kind of like a gray area. Nobody really wants to get into that.
Yeah.
But it means that you cannot really put many legal things into it. So, for example, I cannot really. I mean, I could, but it's not exactly nice to do. To just put your 3D models and your mods that they are like people have to pay for them to get access to them, and then you completely own the thing. So what I try to do, which it doesn't exactly solve the issue, but at least it doesn't make me lose like that credit that is my mod, is in the last Stalker Anomaly mods that I've made, the on the bottom of the foot of each character, I've put my name there.
Ah, okay. Like
So
in Toy
yeah, it's
Story.
yeah. So at
Okay, that's
least it is there. Yeah.
that's a good way out. Okay, well, wow, I didn't know that actually about the modding scene. Very unfair. Um,
Yeah.
very unfair. So, in terms of advantages, let's speak about the good stuff, right? In terms of the
Yeah.
advantages, so what exactly did that do? Because I think it's a good avenue for 3D character artists to kind of look into, especially if they're just starting out. Because again, it just gives you more practice, right? And you said it gives you access to different people from within the community. So if you could dive into that a little bit, maybe expand on that actually a little bit to say your side of things. How did that benefit you as a 3D character artist?
Yeah. Well, I talked about the disadvantages, but I think that the advantages actually very much outweigh the disadvantages, which is why I still am modding. Because if there were so many bad things about modding, I would have stopped doing that. And I've done
Right.
it for like more than half of my life now. So I just
Well.
really like modding. And everything that comes from it is just good, even if there is certain bad things happening. And it is actually thanks to modding that I've gotten so many jobs that I currently have and that I
Okay.
have had. For example, Road to Vostok, actually, um, it's not that it came from modding, but the things that I have in my portfolio nowadays come from modding. So it's like from doing modding, I've actually built something that, for example, Antti looked at and decided that I could be fit for working on characters on his game.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow, that's
modding
amazing.
helps you grow your skills a lot. Um, it's like you practice on projects that are made either by you, just by your own passion, but also with teams. Like you learn to work in teams. Like modding for me, it's like I have this project that I want to do and I am passionate about it. So it's not like if you're doing a sculpture and then you think, oh, it's not looking that well, and then you lose all the motivation. It keeps you motivated because you have that passion for that game and you're doing something for that game. So it's something that helps you grow your skills a lot and helps you learn how to deal with people. For example, I've worked in Sky Oblivion and in Beyond the Skyrim, and from there, I've learned how to deal with people working in a team in kind of a similar environment as in a studio. It's obviously not the same, but you deal with people with different skills, with different roles, and you have to communicate and talk.
Right,
And
right, right, definitely.
yeah, it's very true that lots of companies take modding into account when they have to hire people. Like sometimes you are talking with a company and you say that you have done some mods for video games or whatever, and they just hire you because they're like,
Wow.
well, what you know in a technical level and in a creative level is very, very good.
So
And
that's a
that comes from
credible
modding.
way or a credible thing, let's say, to
Yes.
put on your CV if you don't have a lot of professional work. That's
Yes, it
incredible.
definitely is. Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, you also have, again, it's kind of like going into the gray zone in terms of legality, but there is um, game studios that actually allow um, commissions for mods. For example, the Indie Stone, who made Project Zomboid, they allow that modders get money from just doing mods. So for example, a client comes to you and goes like, hey, I would like this armor in the game, could you make it for me? And you go, yeah, this is whatever cost, and you get that money and you
Wow.
upload that mod for that person, but for also everyone else. And I've gotten a lot of jobs from that as well, which, like the solid snake skin you were talking about, that was one of those.
Oh man, it's awesome. I love it. It's really, but that's so good to hear. I mean, obviously, the developers of Project Zomboid, hats off to them, right, for allowing you to do that, because seeing it, today's gaming scene, something like this is a bit of an outlier, right? You would
Yes.
think that, oh wow, but it should not be that way. It should be, very open, and props to them for sure, and to all the other, obviously, companies that are doing this. They're not alone. The Project Zomboid developers. But do you think that you've interacted with a lot of 3D character artists, from beginners to maybe professionals as well? Do you think that a lot of the up and coming 3D character artists know this? Do you think that they know that the avenue of modding is there for the grabs, and they should try to not only promote themselves on social media and ArtStation and try to network, but also to pursue modding? Like, do you think it's a thing that everybody knows about?
It is not.
It is not.
It really
Okay.
isn't. Yeah,
Wow.
I've known so many character artists and just general 3D artists, which they have never done any mods. And I get it, because they try to focus on their projects, their personal projects of a sculpture of a character they like. And that's also fine. But I do think that modding has so many advantages for like your career. Um, it's true that you can do without it, but modding is going to help you more than just the skill that you are doing. For example, I'm a 3D character artist, right? But I have a lot of knowledge on other fields that generally a 3D character artist wouldn't have, doesn't need to have, so doesn't try to learn it by default. But I've learned it because I've done mods, so I
Right.
know a lot of technical stuff about things surrounding big characters, which I consider that 3D character artists should kind of know, or be whatever else. For example, with RimWorld, RimWorld is a 2D game. It is not 3D. I love that game so much, and
Yeah,
I've
it's a great
wanted
game.
to do mods for it. But obviously, there is no 3D. So what mod am I going to do for it? So I learned how to do some programming.
Oh wow.
I'm not a pro at programming. I'm not good at it, but I've learned how to do it. And if I have to face anything, um, whenever I'm working in anything, I can do it because I have a basic knowledge. So
Right.
I think it also helps you to have like a more wide knowledge on everything else.
Wow, that's really awesome. First of all, well, awesome in many ways. Awesome that you could actually motivate yourself to learn a new skill and to become somewhat good at it, because it's a completely new world, right? Programming. It's completely different to 3D art. But talk to me about for example, the 3D mods that you do. Does that require any programming in order to be installed? Uh, you know, Perhaps there's 3D character artists that are like, a bit scared of learning programming languages or whatnot. So would that need, for 3D characters to be installed into a mod for, a 3D game, would what skill levels does that require, or skill sets, sorry, does that require?
That usually depends on the game. For example, if it is a Skyrim, you don't need any real programming skills.
Okay.
The only thing you need to know is kind of know how their engine works, because you have to export it in a specific format and then use their creation kit to kind of put it into the game. But that is kind of like just pressing buttons and knowing a bit of the fundamentals between of their engine. But other than that, it is not very required. For other games, it depends on their engine. For example, I've been seeing how to mod games of Unreal Engine 5, because Stalker, obviously.
Yeah.
Stalker 2. And wow, that's a complete different story. It's complicated, but it doesn't really, like, in the end, I think it is a very good thing that modding gives you, which is adaptability.
Right.
Because you can be learning how to use Creation Kit to put your new weapon into Skyrim. You could learn how to use Unity to put your armor into, I don't know, I don't, for example, Escape from
Unity.
Tarkov, which is
Okay.
made with Unity.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, I I actually don't know how hard it is to put that to put 3D into Escape from Tarkov. I know it's possible. And then Unreal Engine, practically the same. So you kind of like end up having such good adaptability that it can help you whenever you enter a studio to work. Because when you enter a
That's
studio to
awesome.
work, you have to learn their workflow and their tools. And when it happens the first time, it's kind of like a shock. You don't know. You have to memorize everything because they teach it to you like so quickly so that you can get to work. And if you have a level of adaptability to things, you can learn it so quickly. You don't have to think a lot. You don't have to ask again, how do I do this? How So it helps you a lot with that. You don't need very big skills as a 3D artist to really start doing mods for a game. You just need to have a game that you like, have an idea that you like to put into a mod, and there is your new project for your portfolio, because then you can upload it to your portfolio and be like, yeah, I did this for this game, and
That's
people
really
will see it.
awesome. Now,
Yeah.
that's truly, I think, that's such a fascinating avenue to explore. I've obviously never even considered it, and now that you open up about it, I see, such potential in this. And I think for anybody listening who's into 3D art, I think they should give it a try. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so cool. Plus, and now this is where my inexperience in 3D character art might come in handy. Might come to show itself. What this also helps you do if you're creating mods is actually completely creating a game ready model, and B,
Yes.
seeing that game ready model being used in a game. So it's providing you with, feedback, right, from players and from, the gameplay itself. And you can see how good or bad your work is. So I think it adds another layer of probably, I would say, another layer of feedback for you and for any clients that are looking at your work, because it's not only us looking at a 2D version, 2D picture of your 3D work, but actually being able to see it and play it.
Yeah, it also helps a lot in a motivation level, because, for example, when I uploaded my first mod for Anomaly, it was the Blind Dogs. It was just a remake, and I actually did that project. I had been looking to put one of my models into Stalker, but for this one, I had come out of something that was just kind of like one of these punches on the face that you kind of like, that I'm doing this for nothing. You just go very down,
Yeah.
depressive mode. So I did this dog just in an attempt to just cheer me up again, and I uploaded it. And the feedback from the community was so high that I just got motivated again.
Wow.
Like, I put it up, went to sleep, and I woke up to so many messages of people that loved the blind dog that I made. And were
Awesome.
asking, please make more mutants, please make more mutants. So it was like instant motivation. So when you do these things and you share it with people, they just will answer you with things that will motivate you for sure.
Wow. I can imagine. Yeah, that must be, you know, I think at the end of the day, first of all, word of mouth is the best marketing, probably. And second of all, when it comes from the customer itself and when they're asking for more, I mean, what more can you ask for, right? So, wow, that's really, really interesting and definitely something that I really didn't think about in terms of modding. I
Mhm.
saw it in a very one-dimensional way, but now I see it open up to, completely different avenues for myself as well. What I'm actually very interested about is to talk about a small comment that you made during your webinar, and that is that you, as a reference, use Harrison Ford's face to kind of look at facial structures, and you specifically mentioned the fact that it's very asymmetrical. And if something is asymmetrical, then that's what's going to give the feeling of reality to something that you're making, right? And having everything completely symmetrical is going to give the viewer a bit of a like, what am I looking at kind of thing. So two questions there. First of all, why Harrison Ford? Obviously, great actor. Love him, and especially now with his, well, not his performance, but the new adaptation of Indiana Jones that just recently came out, and
Yes.
he recently came out on the Game Awards. So obviously, we love Harrison Ford. So why him? And two, could you just talk about asymmetry and how important asymmetry is in art and in 3D art?
Yes, so Harrison Ford, because I actually saw the meme in Reddit once that Harrison Ford's face is so asymmetrical that he can be happy and angry at the same time. And when I saw that, I was like, this is true. This is true. So I started using it as reference. Like, it is so good. Like, you can really see how a person is not symmetrical. So it wasn't any reason for like Harrison Ford. I'm such a huge fan. No, I'm obviously a huge fan. I love Star Wars, and I love Harrison Ford, but it's not just because him. It's just his face is such a perfect example. I
Right.
actually use it all the time.
That's
Every
awesome.
single time that I'm teaching, I go to my students and go, Harrison Ford, his face. If you need to do asymmetrical things, please use it as a reference. It is so good. And asymmetric things, they just, it's the naturality of things when you're doing organic um, models, because obviously when you are doing hard surface, which is like, imagine a table or a fridge, those are hard surface. They can be asymmetrical, but it's kind of like you still are designing them. But organic means made by nature, which means it is not going to have perfection, which is what you're looking at, for something that has to be somewhat natural. So when you're doing a face, it is important that you try to keep something of that face as natural as possible. Like, if you're sculpting it completely symmetrical, sure, it's going to be like a sort of fast sculpt, because you don't have to sculpt the other side, but it is going to look weird to you, and you're not going to be able to tell why. Like, why is my face looking so weird? It's because you have put you have put symmetry on. If you put it off in the middle of your sculpt, and then you continue to work on one side and then on the other side, you're going to see a better result that naturally to your brain is going to be like, yes. Because people in real life, they are not symmetrical. When you split someone in half, they are not symmetrical. It's possible that their eyebrow is a little bit more up or more down, that their eyelids work a little differently.
Right.
Generally, for example, it's possible that a person, when they like move their mouth to one side or to the other, it is easier for them to move it to one side than to the other. So that's often the case in people, so often that there is not a single person that is symmetrical. So it is important to keep a symmetry in mind whenever you are doing anything organic. That way you kind of can get a more natural feeling to it.
Right. Yeah, that does make.
It is not necessarily about realism, but more like, yeah, that natural feel to it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's very true. Also, in my art studies, we were talking about the same, asymmetry, and we kind of even looked at our own bodies, and we saw that, well, my left shoulder is higher than my right shoulder,
Yes.
my right foot is bigger than my left foot, and then we realized that it's actually the case, and we also learned that in that way. So, okay, that's very important. All right, and for the asymmetrical part, I think a good reference for that would be, the filter that the symmetry filter that you might have on your
Yes.
phones or something. If you try to
Yep.
make your face super symmetrical, you don't look like yourself at all. So we got Harrison Ford out of the way. That was very interesting for me. Another obviously very interesting, and a big question that I'd like to talk to you about is, your work with Antti. Um,
Yes.
what a big game, right?
Yeah.
What a huge, ambitious project done by Antti. What an amazing guy he is. He managed to get, a very large following. Not only that, he's just generally a very nice person, from, all my interactions with him. So talk to me about how that project came about for you. What was the first introduction to it? What did Andy ask you to do, and how did you basically end up working together?
So my first introduction to the game was actually YouTube recommendations, and this
Hmm.
was like very long ago. Um, I saw the game in my YouTube page, clicked on it, and saw that it was a game being made by a solo developer. It was like a first-person shooter. It had like the vibe that I always like of shooter games. And I clicked on the channel and saw that he had like 3 or 4 videos. And when I saw that he was a solo dev, I just started following him because I saw the project and, as you say, the ambition of it, but I saw like the passion that he had for the game, and just that, like it was amazing for me. Like I
Right.
waited for each video with so much hype
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I
Same.
saw the passion that he spoke in his videos of the game he was making. It was just inspiring to me. Like I talk to my friends all the time. Every time he uploaded a new video, I sent it to my friends going like, "Look, guys, this solo dev has uploaded another video. Like I'm so amazed by it. He's doing it alone. He has so much passion. I wish to have so much passion as well for something that I make."
Right.
And that was so inspiring to me. And when I saw once that he was actually getting contractors to do different bits for the game, I thought, well, I'm going to send something. You don't know, maybe he gets back to me. And I sent him an email saying that I was a 3D character artist, that I also make mods for different games, that I've worked on other games, and if he needs anything, that I'm here. And I was actually on holidays in the house of a friend of mine when he actually got back to me, and we had the first chat about the project. And he
Awesome.
told me about the first characters that needed to be done, and I just was up for it. Like I've loved the game ever since I saw it in YouTube recommendations, and I just think it's such a lovely project and so damn inspiring. Like he's been on the project, he's not left it, he's just kept working on it, and it's
Right.
just inspiring.
First of all, I agree with what you're saying about Road to Vostok. Very ambitious project, but not only that, I mean, you can see the how genuine Antti is about everything. He's straightforward. He's not, taking any shortcuts. He knows that he's in it for the long run. He mentioned that it's the only project that he's ever going to do. And, the amount of people that follow him, the positive comments, they all speak for themselves, and the positive reviews, right? And obviously, the 2 videos that I had with him are the 2 most popular episodes of my podcast. So much so that I have like more than 20,000 views on them, and even that showcases how supportive the community is, because they're there not from for me or for my podcast. They're there because Auntie's there, and Auntie's speaking, and Auntie's talking about the game, and it's just it's wild. I think when the game comes out, it's going to be a big hit, and a big
Yeah.
win for the indie community, which is also very important.
Yes.
But what I'm also very interested in a bit, to talk about more working side of things as a 3D character artist. So how exactly do you manage the creative process, when working on projects, for example, like Road to Vostok, right? Because, as a artist, as a 3D character artist, you're a very creative individual. And when you do your own personal projects, this creativity is, booming, right? You do whatever you want, perhaps even for modding, right? It's your creativity that tells you, I want to do this, let me make it. But when you're working with clients, the 3D character artists, a certain part of what you do has to reflect what the client asked, right? But you also have to add a little bit of your twist to the character, to the character, and a bit of your creativity. So how exactly do you manage this? To have some creativity in the project, but to also deliver on the requirements of the project that you're working for.
So see, the thing is that a big part of my personal projects, well, generally all of my personal projects, tend to be about either fantasy settings or post-apocalyptic ones. So when I get any job that has to do with any of those two, I feel very comfortable because I know that I'm going to do something that I already like. So that's already a big thing. It tends to depend also on the project because obviously there is different type of clients which give you more freedom on this, and there are others which are like, no, you have to do it like this. The thing for example, Vostok, is that Antti has given like a certain freedom with that, with anything artistic and creative, because he knows that the 3D artist knows how to do things, but he puts like references. Like honestly, he's just great to work with,
Right.
because
I would imagine.
he starts telling you the story of the character and how the character acts, who they are, and what is their part in the game. And he tells specific stories if it's a specific character, and it's just so descriptive and helpful to actually get your creative brain running.
Wow.
And
That's
it's so
interesting.
well organized as well. He's very quick to answer questions and give any feedback if anything is weird. uh, he sends so many references, and a very cool part that I really like, which it's hard to actually get from clients, is that he actually goes back into like the depths of the character through Finnish culture. So he
Yeah.
explains things of Finnish culture that I'm learning from here, and it's like, oh, that's amazing. So that gives a lot of creativity to work with that he accepts. But there is many other clients who don't, who are just like, no, you have to do it like this and
Right.
that's it.
Right. Right.
And there is many clients that do not really know that much about 3D. They just have a vision and they want it. If the client is so like so stiff, then I just have to do what I have to do, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if they allow me a little bit of freedom, then I'll definitely take it and put it the same way that I put it on personal projects. Because at the end of the day, when they give you that little bit of freedom, it's also like it turns more passionate
Yeah.
about what you're doing. So that's pretty much what I
Got
do
it.
and how I
Got
deal
it. So
with it.
basically, what you're saying is it depends on who you're working with, right?
Yes.
Depends on who you're working with, and at the end, the most important thing is to getting the job done. But obviously, when you have somebody as open and as cool as Antti is, it's just a pleasure to. It's not even work. It's just having
Yes.
fun at
Yes.
the end of the
Yes.
day,
Yeah.
right?
It's just a blast. Like every
Right.
single character that I've done for Vostok has been just so fun to work.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, I
just
have to say the work you did for Vostok is so amazing. Really
thank you.
amazing. Well, I mean, the collaborative work, I should say, right? Because he brings the vision and you bring the vision to life. So the
Yes.
collaborative work there is so amazing. And I've
Yes.
recently seen I unfortunately I don't know the name of the character, but the guy with the leather jacket who's like really rough and stuff like
Punisher.
that. The Punisher. What an awesome character that is.
Yeah, I think that
And
was
the
my
voice.
favorite one.
I would agree. For me, it's definitely my favorite one. I'm so interested to meet and interact with that one. But such a great team effort right there, and um, and I think like what's also very important, what you did, in my opinion at least, is the characters feel so much in place in that world that he made. Right? They just feel perfectly in line, and everything is so cohesive together that it's just for an indie project to have such cohesiveness and such, let's say, a natural flow of things. I don't
Hmm.
know. It's just, it's just so great to see, everything come to
I'm
fruition.
glad to hear that, because those type of comments that it feels cohesive, like my characters in this world, um, it's something that me as an artist, I don't really get to really see. Like it's kind of like when you are doing an art and it looks bad, and then you wake up the next day and it looks a little better. It's kind of like that, but I just straight up cannot see it because I've worked on the game, but that's just it. Like obviously I've played it and I love it as a player, but it is hard to visualize if
Right.
my work fits there or not.
Hmm.
So that you say that I'm thankful for that.
No, for sure. Thank you. And I appreciate that you're saying it. But also, a little comment that I would like to do. Um, I mentioned this to Antti as well, and I believe you deserve credit in this as well. The characters. or the enemy AI, they blend into the environment so well. It's
Mhm.
just insane. The horror games are scary, but at least because of the fact that I know that it's a horror game, when there's a jump scare or whatever, I'm scared, but I'm anticipating it. But in
Yeah.
here, in this game, it's like, okay, you put daylight, for example, in the game. It's daylight, everything is quiet, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 shots out of
Yes.
nowhere. You're panicking, you didn't know where to run. With the corner of your eye, when you're turning, you see like a silhouette
Yeah.
of the enemy somewhere next to a car. You run away, you hide, and my heart is pumping. I'm terrified. And then I'm like, okay, so let's go find him. And I look out, he's gone. And then I see a silhouette somewhere else and just barely make out the person's head. It's so realistic. It's so like
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
point. Um, and like although the game is relatively small now compared to what it's gonna be, it's just so much fun. So
Yeah,
much
it
fun, and
really
especially
is.
with characters. The ones that you worked with. Again, I'm repeating myself just because it's so good. They fit perfectly in the world, and you guys did a wonderful, wonderful job
Thank
on
you.
that. So that's really good. Um, Probably from here we could take a tangent towards AI, and I talk about AI pretty much with all my guests, just to be able to kind of accumulate a certain amount of thoughts in that regard. Um, I always say that I don't really know where I stand with AI yet, whether I'm for it or against it, because many of the mundane things that I do, sometimes AI is there to help and it's great. But then when I hear that AI could take over a few jobs, and then when AI can do something really, let's say it starts off doing something bad now, but give it a year, it's going to do it much better, and that could lead to a shift in an industry. And I want to talk to you about that because you're a 3D character artist. You probably heard that there's rumors or talks about the fact that, well, 3D character artists are not going to be needed in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years or whatever. Um, and with Meshi AI, I think is one of the most popular AI softwares out there that basically creates 3D models from whatever you write or describe to it. Today, it's a hit or miss. It'll probably work for a student project or something, but 5 years from now, I don't know what to expect. So what do you think about AI and about what it might do in the next 5 to 10 years, and especially in the realm of 3D character art?
Um, I don't think it will really get there
Hmm.
because the main problem of AI companies is that they do not really know the concepts and the fundamentals of 3D, or even sometimes of just art. They don't know it. So many times you go in Twitter and you see a post of some AI 3D company saying, "Oh, we do game ready models," and then you check and they have a wireframe, and the wireframe is either filled with polygons, millions and millions of polygons placed in whichever way, or you see a spiral going around the arm of the character, which is obviously going to give problems, or the UVs are just messed up, they don't work, or the character that they try to make um, doesn't even like it's not even in an A pose or a T pose. It's just already posed. So it's like, yeah,
Oh,
that's not game ready.
I see.
um, you see them use certain terms in a wrong way. They call, I don't know, animation to a pose. That's not an animation, that's a pose. So it's like they don't really
Interesting.
know
I
what
see.
they are talking about. So if we start like that, I just don't think that it will get there. But it is this topic is very similar to when metahumans came to be. I don't know
Right.
if you have
From
heard of
Unreal.
metahumans.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Our 3D character artists, including me, were like, "Oh my god,
Right.
no in the game, no company is going to ask us for characters. We are destroyed." And I heard someone say something that I think it is still stands today for AI. I don't see Raf Grassetti from Santa Monica, or well, now he works in Naughty Dog, or any other art director, along with their 3D team, go to an AI and say, generate Kratos. It is not going to happen because
Yeah.
Kratos is a hero character. It's such an important character that you cannot have it be generated by an AI. The reason why Kratos is like so visual to you and it just sticks to you and you can recognize him anywhere is because humans have worked on it. They have put their knowledge on it. Everything they have learned from their own life, they have put it on it. Everything they know of theory of colors, of silhouettes, they have put it on it. Everything about art they know, it is put on the character. But also the experience of that character. When you're doing a 3D character, um, when you are there sculpting details, you are going to put, for example, a scar on the face of the character, and you're going to be like thinking during the moment that you are sculpting, okay, so what made this a scar? So it goes so deep into it that you think about moments of that character that are probably never going to be relevant for anything in the game and that the players are not going to learn. But that at the end of the day, that is what makes the character. And
Right.
an AI is not going to do that. Even if you say put a scar of a sword on their face, it's not going to be the same because
There's no depth to it, right?
exactly
Mm-hmm.
it's not the soul and the heart of a human putting it into it. And I know it sounds like poetry, but it is true. It is real. You can try generating a Kratos in an AI, and it is going to do it, but it's going to do the Kratos that it has learned to do, not the one that you want the AI to do.
Right.
So that kind of helped a lot of 3D artists to kind of calm down a little with metahumans. And it's true, it has not replaced us. In fact, it is I believe it is a very good thing to learn how it works, because the rigs on the face and everything, it works so good, and you can learn from it to actually make your own rigs. And I think metahumans has
Interesting.
been very good in that sense, and it has not replaced us. We are still here, and I think
Yeah.
AI is not going to replace us either.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy that you answered in that way, because sometimes the answers are a bit negative. Um,
Yeah.
Everything you said right now does make sense. I believe the human touch is so very important. Not even important, I think it's crucial,
Yes.
especially when you're creating memorable characters. Um, and what you're saying about the fact that it's learning from what humans have created, that's so on point, because whatever you ask it to do, it's going to generate it from what's already been created, but you need to create
Yes.
something that has not been created before. So okay, that's
Yep.
a very very positive outlook on this, and am I hope that it's going to stay that way.
Yep.
I prefer to have human 3D character artists do the work. um and to slowly put our conversation to an end, I would like to talk about, some of your favorite games, right? We've mentioned Skyrim, we've mentioned Stalker. You obviously have the pleasure right now to play Stalker 2 after so many years. And obviously after such a hard development process that the studio has had.
Yes.
Talk to me about, you know, what make these games so special for you? Why Skyrim, a game that was released, I believe, more than 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was released. Why is it so relevant today? Why is it so relevant for the industry, in your opinion? And obviously, Stalker as well, a game that came out even earlier than that. And it's being looked up to, it's being mimicked today. And, the whole world has seen now Stalker 2. Everybody's playing it. What is it about these games that stick out to you personally? And why do you love them so much?
um See, Skyrim was my top one game ever, for all these years, and now only Stalker 2 has stopped that.
Wow, that's a big
Yeah.
step.
The thing with the Stalker 2 is that when you walked into it, obviously I'm not going to talk spoilers because obviously
Yeah.
it's still new, you have not played it yet,
Right.
and I'm not going to get into it. But
Thank you.
the moment you enter the game, it feels like playing Skyrim again, actually. That feel of the world is there for you to explore. Every single bit that you see, you can go there and you can actually explore it. and on the way things are going to happen. So I got that feel back from, like, it was 13 years ago that the Skyrim released. I got that feel back, and from Stalker, like, it's one of my favorite games ever, and now Stalker 2 is my top one. And that is talking in a player level, but in a developer level, like, all and each of these games are just so good. Like, sometimes you just walk around and you sit down and watch. And this is speaking about the Stalker and Skyrim. There is obviously others which kind of make you do the same that I really like. But in a Stalker 2 and in a Skyrim, I find myself just stopping to watch, and it is so beautiful. And you think, this is a digital world. Like, you are not there, but there is people that have made all this. Like, every time now in Stalker 2, I walk up to some character and I look at it and I say, man, this is the art of someone. Like, someone has made this character. Like, maybe it's one person, maybe it's two, maybe it's three, maybe it's a big team. But they have also done it through a war. Like, that's heavy to think. And you just keep thinking, like, there is so much in all of this art, in this beauty of these games, that is amazing. And in Skyrim, there is a character artist that I really like. His name is Jonah Lobb, and I learned a lot from him because he used to do some courses and streams, and I watched everything of him. And he's who made, for example, the giants in Skyrim,
Okay.
the
Wow.
dragons.
Oh,
He
wow.
made the Draugr. He made
Wow.
like the
It's a big
big,
deal.
yeah. He made these courses, and that was a big boost for my character art skills. The way he made the characters is so special. It has like that feel that you don't see in many other games, because
Right.
there is thoughts behind it. There is lines that make you look at a place that is specifically made by him for the person that is looking at that character to look there. And that's just crazy. I also play a lot of Elder Scrolls Online, and it has like a very similar feel in that regard. And then there's Parade Zomboid, which is like completely different
Magnificent.
story.
What a
It's
game.
like, the thing with it is that you see it at first and you're like, what are these graphics?
Yeah.
And you don't like it. But then you play it,
Yeah.
and it hooks you so much
Yeah.
that you don't even see the hour, and you're like, oh my god, it's 3 a.m.
Yeah. 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 Been there.
That mix of 2D and 3D, it's so beautiful, and the mechanics are so good. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, there's just so many games. Another that has me like on a developer level, because as a player I really like it, but not the PvP. It's Escape from Tarkov. The 3D of that game, the lighting, the environment.
Right.
That, I think it is one of my favorite games in that regard.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
you enter a room, a house, and the way you see everything placed around, you can kind of tell what has happened there.
Right.
You can kind of tell the lore of the game, but not exactly, just by looking at things. And I think that is incredible.
Right.
There is very
so
few
much
games
sense.
there is very few games that have that feel of not dirtiness to it, but it's kind of like rubbish, things thrown around. And I think that's so well done.
For sure. For sure. No, I agree with what you're saying. You know, with Project Zomboid, I found myself creating adventures for myself.
Yes.
At some point, you know, I'm like, I was also playing with a friend, and we just went on a tangent. We created our own, you know, thoughts, our own bases, our own rule sets, and it's just a wonderful playground. I would say it's a wonderful playground to experiment in. And I think Project Zomboid is a great example of graphics are not the most important thing, right? Not the most important thing. It's the gameplay and the mechanics. But
I think Valheim is also a very good example of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for
I didn't
sure.
like Valheim at first because of the graphics, but then I bought it and played it, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
This game is amazing.
Yeah.
And another example of that is RimWorld.
Yeah.
I think the most hours I have in Steam on a game right now is RimWorld.
Is RimWorld?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the graphics are like, it's 2D,
yeah.
But it's so captivating, like, and that's not regarding like to art, but just to the mechanics and just how the game feels for a player, like how the developers have worked to create something so interesting and replayable all the time.
Absolutely. Also, I don't know if you know this game. It's a game called Kenshi.
Oh yes, Kenshi,
Wow,
I love
what a
it.
game. For
It's
me, it's
incredible.
my number one indie game,
Yes.
if not my most favorite game. It's okay, that's a bit
Yeah.
too far. My favorite indie game. Absolutely incredible game. And again, graphics are not the most important thing.
Yep.
But although the models there are incredible, I really like the way
Yeah.
whoever did them and whoever worked on them. It's just such a fascinating job.
Yeah, I'm not very good with Kenshi, but I love the game. Like every time I play it, I'm just like, wow, I could walk for hours and
Right.
hours.
Right. It's brutal. It's a brutal game.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes,
care
it is.
about you. It's wonderful. You're actually one of the very few people who I speak to who actually played Kenshi. So that's
Really?
really good to hear.
That's nice. I was
Wow.
actually thinking yesterday, I'm feeling like a bit of Kenshi.
Oh, wow. Maybe I'll play it later today as well.
Yeah.
Claudia, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I had,
Yeah.
such a nice time speaking to you. In many regards, in the fact that I learned a lot, in the fact that you have a connection with Antti, and it's so interesting to kind of find that side of the story, and just to see how I would go as far as to say how much in love you are with the game industry and with video games and with the art form that are video games, and you see them in a very artistic way, in a different way, and it's a wonderful perspective to have, and I'm wishing all the very best in your career. And I hope that, perhaps not today, not tomorrow, but eventually in the next big God of War, whatever that is, whatever game you have in mind that you want to do work for, maybe the next Skyrim, that there'll be your name somewhere in the credits mentioning you. And that's going to be such an amazing thing. So thank you very much for your time and for talking to me.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the podcast. As I told you earlier, I loved the podcast that I've seen from you.
Thank you.
And yeah, I just felt so very welcome in this podcast. And
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for the opportunity of being here. It was a pleasure talking to you about it.
Thank you so very much. You're welcome anytime. Absolutely anytime. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.